This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, April 11th show. I'm empowering our community, providing you with opportunities and solutions when it comes to your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. I can connect you with any of the guests that I have in studio or anything that you want to hear in future shows. I'm always love to hear from my listeners. In studio right now, Greg Nunn, founder and principal of Nunn Better Tax Resolution in Redmond. And Greg is a regular contributor to the show. He's also my own personal CPA, which says a lot that he is represented in studio and actually do my personal taxes. Greg, thank you so much for coming back in studio.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And a little background about Gregory Nunn is founder and principal, again, of Nunn Better Tax Resolution in Redmond, Washington, the first firm on tax resolution specialist in Washington State. His passion is helping people that find themselves in a predicament when the IRS, due to failing file tax returns or not paying for the IRS claims that they owe. He represents those troubled taxpayers vigorously before the IRS. His practice also provides tax preparation and tax planning for individuals and businesses. Gregory is a licensed CPA in Washington State and just finished celebrating his 30-year anniversary as a CPA. I'm going to celebrate my 20th anniversary as a mortgage professional, Greg, just coming up in November.
Nice.
10 years behind you. He is a member of the American Association of Tax Problem Solvers, the premier association of professionals helping troubled taxpayers. In 2013, he received the Top Practitioner Award from the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers, and he is also certified tax resolution specialist. Greg has published a book titled Solve Your Tax Problems Now. And I'm excited to have this conversation, not because it's exciting if someone has tax issues, obviously, Greg, but the reality of it is there's probably a lot of people listening to the show now that might have some issues. And so to kind of figure out how to get through those and have an expert that they can actually call to. So I really encourage for you to pick up the phone, call the show, go onto themoneyhour.com, and you can actually listen to any of Greg's previous shows that he's had. And he's actually hung around with me for a couple shows that I've had over the last few years. So Greg, let's go ahead and start out with what are some of the most common tax problems that you see with your clients that you're helping?
The most common tax problems, oddly enough, are people that are self-employed, mainly because they kind of forget to make their estimated tax payments. Mm-hmm. And they'll file their return and not be able to pay their taxes. And then things just kind of accumulate on them. And lo and behold, they start getting into a big tax problem with the IRS.
So what would a listener do, Greg, if they're one of these, self-employed or not, and they just have procrastinated, forgot, delayed, whatever the issue may be, and they've got a notice from the IRS?
The best thing a person can do is file the tax return. Even if you don't have the money to file the return on time. Okay. Because if you don't, the penalty is just going to make your eyes water, potentially. It's a 25% penalty for filing late, up to 25% of the amount of tax that you owe. So if you were to owe 10 grand, it would be a $2,500 penalty. It's 5% a month, up to 25%. So 5 months later, instead of it being $10,000, it's $12,500. So you could have avoided that $2,500 penalty just by filing on time.
Yeah, and I would imagine that there's some people that don't realize that. You think if you just don't have the money to pay, you flat out don't have the money. You just wait and file your tax returns. But the exact opposite. Get them filed, and then you can figure out how to pay those taxes. At least stop those penalties. So what if I have someone that's listening right now that owes money to the IRS? What should they do? Obviously, file their returns. What other advice do you have?
Well, it depends on their entire financial situation. If it's not a lot of money, they can do a streamlined installment agreement that requires no financial disclosure. Okay. And that can be just done online through the IRS website. When it starts getting to be more of a substantial amount of money, well, you have some alternatives. And again, it's a financial analysis of what the person has, what's all their stuff, all their assets. What kind of money do they make? And then it's looking at whether they can do an installment agreement or what's called the offer and compromise that is heard many times on the radio, that is sometimes totally misrepresented by the advertising company, however. But there are so many remedies available for people that just haven't been able to pay their taxes or we procrastinate. We don't file 1 year and then the 1 year becomes 2, the 2 years become 3.
Yeah.
But there are very good solutions available.
So, Greg, what if I have a listener that's listening and they're married and their spouse, not them, but has some tax issues? What suggestion would you have for them?
This can be more of a common occurrence than you think, because you can have a situation where, hey, they're married, but one of them is more of the dominant one when it comes to financial affairs and maybe even a little, unfortunately, deceptive about it, which may have contributed to the marital issues. But if you are an innocent spouse, meaning that you were kept in the dark, you didn't know what was going on, there can be some remedies for you, because it's kind of like the credit thing that you talked about.
Yes.
That is, you both signed the tax return.
Yes.
You're both liable for that tax, and the IRS is going to collect it from either one of you or both of you. They don't care who.
Sure.
In fact, they don't care who even pays 100% of what might be owed. They want their money.
Yep.
So a spouse can get some relief from that. And if you are in an unfortunate domestic violence situation, there's some remedies for that as well.
So again, most important is to pick up the phone and talk to your CPA. And if you don't have one, I've got an amazing resource. Again, he's my personal CPA, takes care of mine and my husband's taxes. The show number 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150. So what about the financial implications if someone listening has tax issues, Greg?
Well, the financial implications can be, again, right back to where you started the show, and that's talking about the FICO score. If the IRS files a federal tax lien, it's going to be a derogatory comment on your credit report. And as we all know, those have a significant impact on your credit score. And if you have that lien hanging out there, it becomes nearly impossible if you want to refi your house, as an example. Although there are some ways to get around that. And then, boy, if you got that federal tax lien hanging out there and you own a home and you think, hey, I'm going to sell my house, get the equity out of it, the IRS will take any and all equity up to the amount of money you owe. So those are the tough parts. They can grab your assets at any time if you're getting into big trouble.
So let's talk about the lien, Greg. So if somebody's listening and they do have a tax lien, what do they do?
If you get a federal tax lien, by the way, you'll get several notices from our lovely IRS before they actually file any kind of federal tax lien. And if you do get it, first of all, read it. When you get something from the IRS, open the envelope and read it. A colleague of mine told me about a client of his that would get all these IRS letters and hide them in his sock drawer so his wife wouldn't see them.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't recommend hiding the letters. Open them up, and if you do have a federal tax lien, you need to get help promptly, right away. Call someone that knows how to deal with the IRS, and you might be surprised what you might be able to do. It does take some time, to get that relief or to see if you even qualify for some kind of relief, but a federal tax lien is a real bugger. And
what about an IRS levy?
Yeah, levies are different than a lien. A lien just puts an encumbrance on your property.
Okay.
A levy is where the IRS actually takes your property. As an example, if you have wages, they might levy or garnish your wages. If you have money sitting in the bank, they might send a notice of levy to the bank and be able to grab that money out of your bank account. But if you do ever get a levy notice, especially related to a bank account, again, there's a time frame that you can possibly get that levy released before the IRS would take any of your money. So again, that's one of those big sirens, radar, lights going off.
Yeah.
You get a levy notice. You're down the pike a long way with having tax difficulties.
So there's been a lot of procrastination, a lot of putting those things in the sock drawer if it gets to the point to where you've got a levy.
And the thing is, sometimes it's just the most innocent of people that get into tax trouble.
Yeah.
I work with it on a non-judgmental fashion. It happens to people. And so it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Just get help. That's the best thing to do.
And that really is what the show is about. The Money Hour is about all areas of your financing and to make sure that you're making the right decisions, you're protected, and you have an expert that takes care of you and lets you know exactly what you need to do. Now, what about if you're getting audited? Obviously, again, pick up the phone and call you, but talk about that a little bit.
But it's interesting. Let's talk again about IRS letters. I like to call them nasty grams because, they can be pretty nasty, obviously. And an IRS notice of audit is not a pleasurable experience. And keep in mind, sometimes you'll get an audit notice and you're just one of the lucky ones the IRS decided to look at, but it has really nothing to do with anything they think might be wrong.
Okay.
But never represent yourself before the IRS if you have an audit. Those agents are trained to ask you questions to find out what else might be going on, what you may or may not be hiding. And they're aggressive. They are very, very aggressive. You want someone in between.
So, Greg, if there's tax issues, can you just take my listeners through the steps? So if a listener has a tax problem, what are those exact steps that they need to take?
Okay. If you have a tax problem, let's assume that you have filed.
Okay.
And you're getting this first notice from the IRS.
Okay. Ordinarily,
the first notice is very benign, kind of describes what it is that they're looking for. Maybe you failed to report some income, or maybe they're sending you a notice because you haven't filed a tax return. But the first notices are very benign, although, believe me, I know when people get them and they open the envelope, their hands are probably sweating. But that's really the time to deal with it. Deal with it now, because once you start getting notices, folks, they're never going to stop until you get the thing fixed. And the notices gradually get more aggressive, more aggressive, more aggressive. So the thing is, when you get it, open the envelope, read it, see what's going on, call your CPA or your tax attorney or somebody that knows what that notice is all about. And believe it or not, sometimes they send out notices that are incorrect.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah, geez Louise. So 60 seconds, I got to take us to break. Greg, tell my listener one thing you want to leave with them. One tip.
The one tip I want to leave with you is, like I say, file your tax return. Keep good documents. That is such an important thing. Keeping support for any and all numbers that are in your tax return.
Okay.
Because then if you do happen to have an audit, you've got the stuff right there. You got the IRS cold, and you don't have to worry about them finding some kind of gremlin in your taxes.
Makes total sense. Greg, thank you so much for coming in, especially at this busy time in your practice. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, yippee, 7 more days.
Coming up next on the Money Hour, Greg Benson with Keller Williams Realty, Bellevue. Real estate's a hot topic, and there's a lot of advice out there on how to navigate through this environment, but the wrong advice can cost you a lot of money and be a big financial mistake. And that's why I'm happy to have Greg in studio right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.